As educators, we know answers matter, but perhaps it's the questions we ask that are most important. In my conversation today with Dave Arrell, we explore key questions for educators. Better educators ask better questions. That's today's topic on this episode of the Educators Among Us podcast.
Welcome to the Educators Among Us podcast, where we share motivational messages and inspiring stories for and about educators. Your host, Scott Barron, is author of the critically acclaimed book, Love 'Em and Lead 'Em, and provides powerful insights and wisdom for those who heed the call to teach, coach, lead, and serve at all levels of education.
This is Scott Barron, and I'm honored to be your host for the Educators Among Us podcast, a very special program that is designed for educators. And when we use that term educators, we are inclusive of anyone, everyone that is involved in the systems of the life of schools, because it takes a team. And we know that there are different sizes of schools, different types of schools, there's different levels of schools. But, if you're a part of a learning organization, an organization that's designed to inspire, to lift up, to provide education to those in the community, we're thankful for you, because you make a difference in a lot of people's lives, some that you'll know now and some you won't know until eternity. But we are so grateful for the contribution that you make and your dedication to be an educator. And it doesn't matter where you serve, in the business office, in the admissions office, in the administrative office, in the classroom, on the football field, the basketball court, in the play, in the band, wherever you are, as guidance counselor, librarian. There's just so many roles that are part of this. And we're grateful that you take the time to be prepared every day and bring it to change lives. And so we just want to be an encouragement for you. And every now and then, we provide some insights through the weekly encouragement for educators, and hopefully you're a subscriber to that. And but we also have a chance to have some conversations. And this is one that I've been excited to share with you, because Dave Arrell is a good friend. We've been through it, and I know I started in education working with Dave, and it was we were in Maryland at a school, and just had some great adventures there. And so he's involved in some exciting things happening up in Ohio now, and leading the startup of schools as school choice begins to expand there, and inspiring and providing real leadership guidance. I think what I love about Dave is his passion for not only just education leadership, but being there as an encouragement and an innovator. Right. And because we know that, adapting in this new era of education requires a different mindset. And so it's important. We're seeing a lot of innovation happening in different types of schools, public and private and charter, and different higher ed and K-12, and even in preschool. But Dave's a part of a lot of that's happening there in the Midwest. And so I wanted to take the time, Dave, thanks for taking the time out to, explore some conversations together, and just you to tell your story, because I really appreciate you and all that you do, because whenever we have conversations together, it's always an inspiration.
Likewise, Scott. I was thinking that it's coming up on 30 years that we've been friends.
And you stuck with me all that time. That's the scary part.
We were so young.
Yes. Oh, there's so many things, right? Yeah, for sure. Well, we've been through a lot of adventures, and of course, in that we've learned a lot of lessons, and that's hopefully what we wanted to share today, is a little bit of some of the insights that hopefully provides maybe some shortcuts or inspiration, or some prevention, right, for those that are in different roles, or maybe even considering a role in education. But hey, we'd like to start these conversations off, Dave, with a little bit about your background, but also who is an educator that significantly impacted your life, and why?
Well, it's a great place to start. I can think of several that have impacted my life, and you might be surprised by the first one. And that was an early education. I was still in grammar school, And the teacher was well-meaning, but their outdated methods really did a number on me. And I admit to being a handful in school, and I admit to being distracted. But the repercussions were, I consider them unjust and crushing to my spirit. And so, like many educators, there's a part of me that wants to make sure that never happens to anybody else again. But on the other side, there were many more who were very encouraging, who helped me understand a little bit more about how I learned and valued me as an individual and helped me gain a voice, which I deeply appreciated at the time and even more so now.
Yeah. It's interesting there as we have a chance to pose that particular question to, sometimes we're doing board retreats or leadership, conversations or others. And it's a question that kind of prompts a lot of different conversations. And quite often we will have someone who shares a negative story where it was not inspirational at all. It was actually, it became an inspiration by sort of by accident in a way, right? Because it was, man, I want to be better than that. I want to give kids a better hope than I got, right? And so yeah, I think that's a part of the story of some, and that's part of the reason why we do this, right? Because we want to be sometimes better than what we experience ourselves.
Exactly, and I get that their intentions were great, and I'm sure that that's the way they were taught. But it didn't work for this young student.
I hear you. Yeah. So when and how did you get started as an educator?
Whew. Well, I don't think that I ever aspired to be an educator. I do believe that God put me in positions of influence early to work with other people, to work with sometimes my peers, but sometimes people who are younger than I was. I got to work in youth groups, and I was a youth pastor. And I don't know if you remember this, but I really thought that I was going overseas into foreign missions. I remember missionaries kind of were my heroes growing up because I saw them as people who were living out their faith in a very complex world. And so I had an interest in architecture, and I started at Temple University to be an architect. And I wanted to build buildings for missionaries. And along the way, I knew that if I was going to go on the mission field, I needed to get Bible training. And so I went to Lancaster Bible College and went through that program, not only in Christian education, because I figured I'd be working with young people in churches, but also in missions. And I spent some time in the summers in foreign missions. I don't know if you remember my stories of going up the Amazon River in Brazil, but life is an adventure, and God takes you to very unique places along that journey. But I remember near graduation thinking, okay, now what? And so I talked with my pastor, and he had come out of the Christian education background, Christian schooling background, and he said, why don't you consider working in a Christian school and using what you do as sports and what you know about the Bible and building relationships with kids, and why don't you teach in a Christian school? And I really hadn't thought about it before then. But as God would have it, within 30 days, I had 4 job offers. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt, I was to go and teach high school students and middle school students about the Lord in Bible class, but also to coach. That's how I got here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that we worked together as fellow administrators, and I know you had a real passion for coaching baseball, and I used to watch you interact with the players, and they always had a real fond connection with you in that. But now you have, and of course, you went on to get a master's at Johns Hopkins University, and really grow into this leadership role. and then you're ahead of a couple of schools and navigated through that. Sometimes you dealt with a very healthy and vibrant board, and sometimes you've had to deal with a couple of knuckleheads. And through that journey, that's just part of it. We all have to navigate through a
Yeah.
lot of those types of relationships. So what exactly now? Because you're leading the growth and the planting, the starting up of new schools, and this is something that we are seeing as a priority in some of the states that have moved forward pretty aggressively, like Ohio has done, in promoting and providing for school choice options. So expanding some of those, at least creating what is referred to as a pluralistic system, right? Where it's not about the politics. It's really about how we create the best opportunities for students and the development of citizens. And so, as you've gone through this journey the last few years, right? Because you transitioned out of school leadership into this role, what are you seeing? What are some of the trends happening both in Ohio and sort of regionally in the expansion of school options?
Well, I think generally there's an understanding that we can do better in schools, and that is not in any way bashing one system. It is about creating um, a school or a series of schools of best practice. We are traditional in how we lead and operate schools, and breaking out of that tradition, breaking out of the teaching the way we have been taught mindset is difficult. And so sometimes you can make change within a system. And as change agents, like I know to whom I speak, change is hard. And it does not come easy to individuals, let alone systems and people groups. And so sometimes the best way to affect change is to start something new, to take best practice and apply it in a new situation, to build off of the negative and positive lessons of the past, and to create something new and to create synergy around that vision for what education could be. And so I think there's an understanding that in some ways what we're doing is not working. And I think that there's all kind of educational reforms. There are people who are working within the system to bring about change, but sometimes those changes are incremental. And we're losing a generation. If we just look at the NAEP scores, we have to say we must do better. But there's a lot of things that factor into those scores. And so it's not just an easy answer. As you well know, learning is a complex situation, and there are many, many factors.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? This is one of the things that's a part of our model at School Growth is that as you look at what it takes to transform schools, it often there are things that can become distractions. And I was actually talking with a group that was up in the Northeast here recently, and they had some folks that were keenly interested in a sort of a small city there in transforming all the schools, however they're funded. They really wanted to offer the families in their communities much better options. And there's the sort of the default goes after sort of curriculum and they go after a lot of other elements around how schools technology. They want to do buildings and other things, and those are all great, but in the end it's about leadership. And I think this is an area that you have focused a significant amount of your time is, we have seen in the United States hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions of dollars invested in school transformation that have moved the needle very little. Right? I mean, especially in urban areas, there are some pockets and there are some examples of some things that have done well, but overall, long-term growth, playing the long game to sustainably and authentically transform schools it's a community thing, right? I mean, it's not just a transformation of schools, it's a transformation of communities. And this is where we've
Absolutely.
seen a tension, is that a lot of pressure and investments have been made in the schools, yet it's the families that have the control over the majority of the variables, right? Schools can control the qualities of their educators. They can control the curricular quality. They can control the cultural quality. But after that, it kind of tapers off quickly. There's so many other variables that are the responsibility of the student and the parent and the community. And educators end up being held accountable for so many variables they have close to zero control over, right? And I think that's a tension that you've seen as well. But it's about leadership. That it's not the kids in the building that keep us from excellence. It's always the adults.
Always the adults. Everything rises and falls on leadership. We've beat that cliche to death for years, but it's true. And when you talk about school reform, you're talking about changing education. The leader in the school, and I would suggest the leader of leaders in the school, because if they don't have that mindset that they're leading leaders, they're missing the point, and they probably shouldn't be there. But it is what happens on campus. But I think, to your point, what happens outside of school really is having an impact on what's going on inside of school. The leadership in the home is all but absent. Statistics are telling us that more kids are growing up in unstable families. Some of them don't know which house they're sleeping in tonight, or if they're sleeping in a house tonight. And students come from all different types of backgrounds, but what we're seeing is this dissolution of the nuclear family has educational ramifications that will be generational in fixing. And so, yes, it is about leadership, but it's not just about the person who is called the superintendent, or the person who is the principal or the lead teacher.
What do you think is the biggest challenge then, right now, kind of moving into 2026, and recognizing that there's a lot of change kind of coming at us? What are you forecasting as sort of the opportunities for growth and improvement and transformation in our schools?
There's a piece of me that would say, like many have said, I think we have to go back to some basics. I think we are teaching what to think and not so much how to think. I think we have squelched voices in taking information in. If I'm a student now, I'm probably only hearing from one or maybe two sides of a conversation. But any conversation is going to have more than two sides. And I think we need to fully understand, if we want students to be educated, we have to stop telling them certain things and equipping them to think. Excuse me.
So you're involved now in Ohio with the network there that's helping to expand schools and start up schools, and kind of give us an idea of what you're working on.
Well, we'd like to present parents with an option.
Okay.
To give them an option for something different for their children. In many places, the local public school is it, and they don't know that they have an option. And so if you have school choice in your state and there are no choices, or there are no seats available, what good is school choice? That just doesn't make any sense. And so what I've been doing is listening to people, and I'm available to answer their questions when they say, we'd like to start a school, but we have no idea how to start. I just smile and say, okay, great. Let's have that conversation. Because I need you to think out loud, individually and collectively, about who this school is for. What is it going to look like? Why are we doing it? And then the other mechanics of when and where we're going to do it. I mean, these are all basic questions.
Sure.
But when you drill down below those questions, who's it for? What type of kids? We can't service all. But what kind of kids are we looking for?
Right.
And then we talk about what does it look like? And this is where the fun begins. When we talk about what school looks like, people have an idea. As you asked me at the beginning, teachers that influence them, and they have experiences that influence them, good and bad. And that's their beginning point. That's their origin story for a new school. But we can't stay there. That's not enough.
Sure.
But I believe through questions, I can kind of lead them to a better way of doing it than probably what they would come up with on their own.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've found that the advent of questions, being able to explore and really spending some time even thinking through the right question, right? The question that really captures the essence of where we're going. I'm actually meeting with a group tomorrow, and that's one of the things that I posed back to them was, what's the right question for our time together? And we're still working on it. We're actually texting back and forth to figure out what's the right question. If we're going to maximize the productivity of our time as a leadership team, then where could we most effectively invest our efforts? And so we still haven't nailed it, but I do believe with certainty that people respond better to questions than like goals or other elements because it creates a bit of a curiosity. It feels less threatening and sort of onerous, but it allows for that curiosity element to kick in. And so regardless of the group, but especially with educators and boards and others, those questions are so powerful and I think are an important exercise to do because, if we could nail the question, I think it was Einstein that said, man, if I had an hour to solve a problem that my life depended on, I would spend 55 minutes determining the correct question and then 5 minutes solving for it, right? So I do think there's a truth to that. There's a wisdom in that of making sure that we're focused on the right question. And of course, schools now are asking new questions, and they have to. They have to begin to explore with a great deal of curiosity where are the opportunities for us to grow and adapt our models while still being true to our mission, right? While still being, very, very purposeful and consistent in mission, but being much more adaptable, even though we've talked about growth mindset for quite some time. And lots of books and famous authors, et cetera. The actual practice of a growth mindset is hard. It's hard because growth is hard and asking hard questions and being vulnerable but it takes energy for our minds and our bodies to pursue questions. And I do think that's a vital part as we go forward, as we redesign and transform schools. We're going to have to get even better at asking better questions.
So that is kind of the framework that I use, especially when I talk with school leaders and when I talk with teachers.
Yeah,
we talk about questions. I use questions to prompt their thinking, to guide them. When we teach and we ask students questions, we only delve into one or maybe two of those levels of questions, those types of questions. And I really think we ought to train students to think through all three levels in the same lesson. I think we should make sure they understand the content and gathering. Did they get the information? But then we should give them the time to process it and analyze it. And I think in every situation, we should ask kids to apply it. And if we don't, I think we're short-circuiting the learning by not pushing them through questions, through authentic examples of their learning to demonstrate their higher order thinking, their deep understanding. And students in kindergarten can do this. They can be pushed very gently to take in information and use it and then create something, that highest order of thinking, to create something to demonstrate their thinking or the way things ought to be. Sure. What a phenomenal what's interesting to me is when kids come to kindergarten, they love learning and they have thousands of questions. But by the time they're seniors, they don't have any questions. In fact, they think they know everything. So there must be a systemic thing that we're doing here that's messing that up. And so I think if a concentration or a remembrance of the importance of questions, if we're not breeding curiosity, and if we're not equipping the capacity to go and formulate a question first, to your point, but to find an answer and then construct an argument based on it,
right,
we're not educating. We're barely even entertaining. Indeed. So here's what I ask the students, and I think this two things may transform education just by these types of things. So first, we should ask kids what the best question is they were asked. The second thing is, what was the best question you asked today? You want to change a school? You want to change a family? You want to change a society? Those two questions.
Got it.
What was the best one you were asked? What was the best one you asked?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Well, that's awesome.
Tell me why.
Yeah.
Tell me why.
That makes total sense. Asking great questions. That's the theme of our interview today and our conversation today is just get the questions right, because when you do that, it changes things. It changes perspective. It changes path. Right. It's a vital part of education and of being an educator. Right. It's a part of it. Dave, thank you for all that you do. What you're doing there in Ohio, but also I just appreciate you as a friend and the thoughtful conversations that we have together. It's exciting to know that we're still growing ourselves as we've gotten older and a little more gray hair and other things that are going on. Right, we've still been able to stay curious, and so I really admire that about you and the work that you're doing there. Thank you for sustaining that momentum and that energy as you work with so many schools and really starting to be a part of the entrepreneurial spirit there in Ohio, which is exciting to see. A lot of education entrepreneurs that are doing some new and creative things that hopefully will be a model for some other areas of the country as well. So thank you again, all of you and your team, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Scott.
My pleasure. All right, we'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining us for the Educators Among Us podcast and for your courageous commitment to this noble calling. We get you and the challenges of this work. To stay connected with this community, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and weekly encouragement at educatorsamongus.com.